Despite the carefree attitude exhibited by these German officers, in 1944, the Third Reich seemed doomed. The end of a reign which exacerbated the folly of certain SS officers. In Paris, on the evening of the 6th of April, a telegram arrived. It announced the roundup of 44 children and their guardians. Hidden in the Izieu orphanage, their only crime was being Jewish.
J'ai vu s'engouffrer dans le couloir 3 hommes en civil. J'ai entendu les cris et les larmes des enfants et les hurlements des soldats allemands qui criaient « Schnell, schnell ». C'était le moment où il embarquait tout le monde dans le camion.
Qu'est-ce qui est plus cher pour une mère comme des enfants? Il n'a plus cher? Non. Dans la vie, il n'a pas plus cher comme des enfants.
Les 44 enfants, c'était quoi? Qu'est-ce qu'ils étaient? C'était des innocents!
"44 lives caught up in the Nazi extermination machine and the collaboration of the Vichy regime. Alexandre Halaunbrenner, Paul Niedermann, and Samuel Pintel are all direct witnesses of the fate of these children. From the camps of Vichy to the house in Izieu and the death camps, they will recount their journey. A somber chapter in our collective history. To retrace the story of the children of Izieu, we have to go back to the beginnings of Nazism.
I was born on November 1st, 1927 in Germany. I saw Nazism come into being around me. In 1935, the Nazis passed the so-called racial laws of Nuremberg, which changed my life right from that moment.
Paul Niedermann lived in Karlsruhe in southern Germany. He was 8 when those laws came into effect.
The teacher arrived in the classroom, shouting, as usual, "Niedermann, stand up!" I stood up. I was trembling. I was scared. He explained to me, "You're Jewish, which means you can't do the Hitler salute. So gather up your things, get out, and never come back." All Jewish students in German schools, primary, secondary, universities, out. We were stripped of German nationality. We were pariahs from one day to the next.
Paul's father lost his job, like most of his neighbours and friends. Over the next 5 years, the Jews in Germany suffered public humiliation and anti-Semitic violence. The pogroms. For Paul and his family, this violence came to an end on the night of the 21st of October, 1940.
At dawn, they hammered on the apartment door. When my parents, or it might have been my grandparents, when they opened the door, there were 3 Gestapo officers. Gather what you can carry, a small case, a rucksack, whatever you can carry. Everyone went down into the street, and they made us climb into a truck. There were already some other Jews from the neighborhood in there. Old folk, sick people, children, babies. They took us to Karlsruhe Central Station. We had absolutely no idea what was going to happen to us.
More than 7,700 people from southern Germany were crammed into the convoy. It was the first stage of Adolf Hitler's plan to make Germany Judenfrei, purified of Jews.
The journey lasted 3 days and 4 nights. There was nothing to eat or drink. The trains finally came to a halt 25 miles from Pau, on the way to the Atlantic. We saw arriving an endless line of trucks with a military look, or maybe police, anyway, khaki. You should have heard the shouts. It was the Vichy police.
When Paul Niedermann arrived in France, the country had just lost its war against its sworn enemy. Germany now ruled the territory, and Marshal Pétain was the man in power.
Français, j'assume à partir d'aujourd'hui la direction du gouvernement de la France.
But the heroes of one period are rarely the heroes of another. Just 3 months after its appointment, the Vichy government put in place a swathe of measures for the control and exclusion of Jews in France. It began setting up camps. Paul Niedermann found himself in one of the biggest, in the southwest.
The Gurs camp was a single street over a mile long, and on either side, there was what they called îlots, which I was told is a military term. In other words, blocks. The trucks stopped in front of each block, and a certain number of men were shoved off outside each block. They made us go inside, then closed the barbed wire.
More than 10,000 foreign Jews were interned in this camp. They lived there with other proscribed groups, whether Spanish Republicans or French or foreign communists. Paul lived for nearly 18 months in these camps. Like Arnold Hirsch, aged 14, and Egon Gamiel, aged 5, both future residents of the Izieu orphanage.
Que préférez-vous? Sacrifier les Juifs à la France ou sacrifier la France aux Juifs?
In 1941, a defeated France was seeking a scapegoat for its woes. This was found in foreign Jews. On the 14th of May, 3,700 men were arrested in Paris and another 4,000 in August. Like the German Jews before them, the Jews in France were living in a climate of terror. From the 7th of June 1942, Jews had to wear a yellow star in all circumstances from the age of 6.
We couldn't go to movie theaters. We couldn't go into the squares. If we wanted to take the metro, we had to use the last car. I thought it was almost normal to wear the star because I'm Jewish. It might seem silly now, but at the time, that's how I felt.
Alexandre was the youngest child. His 2 sisters, Mina and Claudine, were later boarders at Izieu. His family was of Polish origin and lived in the Marais, a working-class Jewish quarter in the centre of Paris. There were constant rumours of arrests and roundups. On the 16th and 17th of July 1942, the biggest wave of arrests on French territory took place. It went down in history as the Vélodrome d'Hiver roundup.
A few days beforehand, we'd heard that on the 16th and 17th there were going to be roundups. So my mother said, "We stay at home. We're not moving." We saw some inspectors arrive in the courtyard. They came and knocked at our place. They said, "Mr. Halaunbrenner?" My mother opened the door and said, "He's gone to buy some cigarettes." "Never mind, we'll come back tonight." They didn't insist. And we didn't go anywhere. We waited, and then that evening, they didn't come back.
In total, French police arrested 13,152 foreign Jews in 2 days, including more than 4,000 children. Alexandre Halaunbrenner's parents decided to leave Paris immediately, convinced they'd escaped the roundups. They wanted to reach the free zone in the south of France. Before leaving the capital, Alexandre's mother took the family to a photographer. This is the last picture of Mina and Claudine, and the last of all the children together. On the morning of the 8th of October, a guide came to fetch them.
It was very early, perhaps 6 o'clock in the morning. We left all our belongings behind. We had nothing. My mother had the necessary, some money, no doubt. Then we all squeezed into this little car. We reached Angoulême. The guide showed his cash. He must have said that we were his family. Then we arrived at our dropping point in a hotel. After 8 days, the gendarme came to the hotel to notify us we'd crossed the demarcation line and that we couldn't stay beyond a certain date. They said they were going to put us in an accommodation center. That's what they called it, perhaps to avoid scaring us.
Like Paul, Alexandre Halaunbrenner was then shipped from camp to camp. They both spent some time at Rivesaltes, near Perpignan, in a camp used to house Jews from the Free Zone. It was a key place in the story of the children of Izieu.
Whichever way you looked, there were just barracks blocks and more barrack blocks. That was all you saw. Outside, there were mobile guards. That's what they called them at the time, but they were Pétain's guards.
In Rivesaltes, families were systematically separated. Alexandre's father was put in touch with a group of foreign workers. Alexandre was only allowed to see his mother and sisters during the day. The rest of the time, he and his brother were left to look after themselves.
We arrived in the barracks and wanted to go to bed. Then we saw the other people in there, Spanish Republicans and gypsies. Some of them took their shoes and put them under their bellies and slept on them. Well, we understood why, because you could get your shoes stolen. So Lero and I did the same thing. It was absolutely full. During that period, it was full.
Food became an obsession, especially for the youngest who, like Alexandre or Paul, mainly had to find whatever they could on their own.
For the almost 2 years of my internment, I never once saw meat or eggs or milk, vegetables, fresh fruit, salad, potatoes, or pasta. Nothing. Twice a week, we were allowed half a pound of bread. And I'm sure it was 50% sawdust. It stuck to your mouth, it was inedible. But that was what we all had. At Rivesaltes, for example, the children went through the trash every day behind the kitchen block to find leftovers that were still edible. I ended up eating things I'd never have looked at before. But if you found anything edible, you ate it.
I had every sickness you can imagine. I had diseases that people don't even know the name today. I had what they call gourme, in other words, impetigo. It means pustules, which never got better. It led to swelling in my armpits.
Just among us, in the first weeks of winter 1940-41, which was a very cold winter, we lost 1,200 people. I hadn't seen many dead people in my life up to age 13. I made up for lost time. All those dead, we had to bring them out during the morning. They passed through the camp with a truck. It was the only way. They tossed the bodies on the truck and buried them in mass graves.
This was no doubt the infirmary. I remember we could come here to look at people in agony. There might have been other windows, but this was the one we watched from. The worst thing I saw, without really realizing, because when you're a kid, you can't grasp it, was seeing a 1-year-old baby who had died. He was in the morgue, and with my Spanish pals, we went to see him. They hadn't even closed his eyelids, so we saw the baby's eyes like that. We just looked, as if it was just ordinary. It's not that we didn't have any compassion. We didn't understand. We were kids.
Several organizations realized the urgency of getting the children out of the camps. Among these was the OSE, Œuvre de Secours aux Enfants, a secular Jewish humanitarian organization. In 1941, it came to the aid of 5,000 interned children. The OSE supplied them with blankets, food and medication. Above all, it organized getting them out of the camps, either through legal or sometimes clandestine means.
They were people who had understood that one had to resist, each in their own way. You had to do something. They weren't people who sat around watching and thinking. They acted. So they went round those who'd been interned, like my parents, to propose to them that they might be able to get us out of the camp and put us in what they called children's homes, later in hideouts.
The OSE was striving to save children, while Vichy was trying to get rid of them. In July 1942, the French government asked the German authorities for authorization to deport them.
I wasn't far from the barracks where they deported people. And I saw the Feldgendarmerie wearing a metal thing there, very wide, like a banana, and a helmet. They were taking people out, putting them on trucks to take them to the trains. I saw that 2 or 3 times. And when people knew the Germans were coming, they were all afraid because they didn't know if they were going to be taken away.
The OSE intensified its operations. Each child removed from the camps was a child saved.
You have to imagine what it must have been like for parents to entrust their children to people they didn't know at all. Okay, they said it was the OSE. That's what they told us. They couldn't say anything else. They had to hand over their children and no longer have any control or communication with them. They didn't even know where they were going. Given our experience in the camps, the parents ended up agreeing. We couldn't imagine that we could lose our parents. It was awful. I never left my parents' side, not even to go to holiday camp. Never. We always did everything as a family. My little brother suffered more. He was distraught. I was 14 and a half, and I'd never been separated from my parents. I was part of a group which slipped out, which escaped. There were 8 of us. We had to meet at a point along the fence. Then a van arrived, gas-powered. It smoked and made more noise than a locomotive. A lady in the uniform of the French Red Cross got out. It was Sabine Zlatin.
Sabine Zlatin was a social worker with the OSE. It was she who later founded the house at Izieu. The evening she met the Niedermann brothers and the other children, she was accompanied by a chauffeur.
She got him to cut the 2 lower strands of wire. He had big gloves. He took hold of the barbed wire and pulled it open. Then the 8 crawled through. Little ones first, then the older ones, quick as we could into the van.
Among the 8 children freed that night was Otto, aged 10. Paul and his brother found refuge in an OSE house a few miles away at Palavas-les-Flots, at the time run by Sabine Zlatin.
There, I got back to real life. Of course, I no longer had my parents, but I was well fed. I slept in my own bed. There was a bathroom to wash in. Everything you could ask for. A proper life. Then they told us, now you're going to see a doctor. I said, what's that? They measured us, weighed us, examined us the way doctors do. I was 5 foot 4 inches and weighed 70 pounds. Not a pretty sight.
A few weeks later, the OSC managed to send Paul's brother to the United States. But Paul was too old and had to stay in France alone. Alexandre was still interned at Rivesaltes. His sole comfort was the rare moments he spent with his mother and sisters.
They had attributed 2 or 3 beds to her, but she didn't use them. She had put mattresses on the floor because it was more practical for her to be with Monique, who was 11 months old, Claudine, who was 3.5, and Mina, who was 7. I remember when we arrived. Monique was crawling, and she pulled herself up on the wall and started to walk like that. She was 11 months old. I remember little things. Mina was nearly as big as me, and sometimes we'd fight. We'd wrestle. We were very close. But I was even closer to Claudine, because my parents were spending more time looking after the baby, while I looked after Claudine.
In 1943, thanks to a Vichy law, Alexandre's father managed to free his family. The Halaunbrenners then left the camps for good. Together again, they moved in with a cousin in the Lyon region. At Palavas-les-Flots, Paul Niedermann remained with Sabine Zlatin and the OSC. There, he met a man who would play a key role in his life, Miron, Sabine Zlatin's husband.
Miron was terrific. He took care of me. He told me that if I didn't learn French very quickly, I was done for. If I was spotted as a German Jew, I was dead. I can tell you that spurs you. When it comes to learning a language, that's one hell of a motivation. It was a very pleasant period, except that in 1942, the Germans invaded the whole of France. I saw them arrive in Montpellier. Like an idiot, I watched. Old Zlatin said to me, "Are you an idiot or what? Do you want to be caught? Don't stay there."
On the 11th of November 1942, in response to the Allied landings in North Africa, the Wehrmacht invaded Free France. Now under German control, the region was no longer safe for the Jews hiding there. The OSC had to erase all trace of the children it was housing.
All the staff of the OSC offices were there, and they completely trashed all the paperwork, which they couldn't allow to fall into German hands. They tore it up and burnt it. No trace could be left.
Now masters of practically all the French territory, the Nazis accelerated the hunt for Jews. The OSC had to deal with ever-growing numbers of children. Depending on the German operations, they were moved from house to house. In January 1943, Paul learned from one of his companions that he was now an orphan.
He told me, "Don't wait for your parents. The people deported to the supposed work camps in the East are all killed." For a kid aged 15, that was pretty tough. The way he told me that was so brutal. He told me, "Your parents are not coming back." I couldn't understand that my parents had been killed most horribly simply because they were Jewish. And to tell you the truth, I still don't understand.
For fear of deportations, the OSE decided to close its houses one by one. Sabine and Miron Zlatin had to find another place of refuge. They went to Chambéry, a region controlled by the Italian army, which took a softer line regarding Jews. Helped by local official Pierre-Marcel Wiltzer, they found a house perfectly legally in the village of Izieu. It was a large place with room for some 60 children. At Miron's request, Paul Niedermann joined them there. He was accompanied by his firm friend Theodore Rais, known as Theo, aged 15.
Theo was quite a guy. We'd been to a lot of places together. He spoke the same patois as I did. We had the same origins. He wasn't from Karlsruhe, but from just down the road. We arrived up there, and we were told, "The garden's down there. Don't touch the fruit trees. But between them, dig it all over, clear the ground. Get a move on. We have to grow some veggies right away." He was always out on the road with his bike and trailer to buy the things we couldn't produce. Meat, flour, we couldn't grow that. But we could take care of veggies and fruits. When I first got there, it felt like a haven of peace.
A few weeks after opening, the house was home to around 60 guests. Among them was little George Halpern and the Bolker brothers. The Zlatins did all they could, each in their own way, for these children.
I only saw Sabine occasionally. She didn't come to the house very often because she was looking for children who needed evacuating. And Miron provided for his family, his wife, and everyone around. He was, how can I put it? He was a gruff man. He wasn't very talkative, and he was quite solitary and very calm. I never saw him lose his temper. He was full of compassion for others, and he never hesitated to put his life in danger to save others. Never.
Despite being separated from their parents, the children were able to forget somewhat the horrors of war in the Izieu orphanage. Some 50 miles away, Alexandre was not so lucky. Family life was shattered by the head of the Gestapo in Lyon, Klaus Barbie. All-powerful in the region, he hunted down the resistance and arrested any Jews still present. On the morning of the 24th of October 1943, Barbie was looking for Alexandre's cousin, Joseph.
I came home with my father, and who opened the door? Not my mother. It was the Gestapo. Barbie was there. Barbie said to my father, "Tell us where Joseph is." My father didn't get flustered. He sat down, took off his jacket, and took Monique, the baby of 23 months, on one knee, and Claudine on the other. There he was, with his two daughters. He was content, and then he answered them. Only Barbie was interrogating him, not the others. He started to shout at my father. "If you don't tell me where Joseph is, you'll be shot within 24 hours. My father replied in German, "Kein Eindruck, Manner." No idea. I don't speak German. But ever since that day, that has stuck in my head. I can't remove it. Unfortunately, my brother came home from work. He thought it was Joseph because my brother was tall. He started to search him. My mother said, "Can't you see? He's a child. Why are you searching a child? He's my son." She was shouting. She pulled him one way. He pulled him back. This went on until he got out his revolver and hit my mother on the hand, so she let go. She let go. She let go, and we saw them get into the car.
Alexandre's older brother and father were arrested. For fear of suffering the same fate, the rest of the family hid in the houses of local residents.
My mother wanted news about my father and brother. She said to me, "Come on, let's check the hospitals." We were told that there was no one called Halaunbrenner. But opposite, they said there was the mortuary. It was when we went over there that I saw my father. My mother didn't dare look. She started to shout. So on the official papers it says, "Identified by his son, age 12.
Jacob Halaunbrenner, who was interrogated for several days by Barbie, died in an attempted escape. With no resources, Alexandre's mother had no choice but to be separated from her children. Monique, 23 months, was put in a nursery. For Mina and Claudine, she turned to the OSE.
My mother explained to them what had happened, that we had nothing, no ration cards, no money, and that maybe we were on a wanted list. You have to do something. They said, "We've got room in the house for Mina and Claudine." We didn't yet know it was Izieu.
On the 6th of November 1943, Sabine Zlatin carefully noted down the day's arrivals. Mina and Claudine appeared for the first time on the lists at Izieu. The house acted as a final refuge, but its position was becoming increasingly precarious. Italy had capitulated 2 months earlier, and its troops had left the area. They had been replaced by German soldiers. Like elsewhere in Europe, they were putting their plan for the extermination of all Jews into action. The net was closing on the Izieu orphanage. Samuel Pintel was 6 at the time. He and his mother had been assigned to live in a small hotel in Annecy.
On the 16th of November 1943, we came home from school and there were 2 trucks behind us. Armed men blocked the exits. Everyone gathered there was identified. My mother told me to let go her hand and ordered me to take that of the young woman standing next to me. The 2 women exchanged glances. That woman wasn't Jewish. She took my hand. Her name was not on the list, so she wasn't arrested. She passed me off as her son, so I wasn't arrested either. And my mother climbed into the truck. That day the Germans took away 20 people, including 5 children. They were all taken via Annemasse to the camp at Drancy.
Drancy, to the east of Paris, was the point where all deportees to the death camps converged. Samuel's mother was deported to Bergen-Belsen. Samuel was taken in by Sabine Zlatin in Izieu. The boy discovered a house where the carefree mood of the first days had evaporated.
It was a Thursday, in early winter, when we arrived. The days were short, it was cold. I mainly remember that mood of weak light, mist, and cold. It wasn't cheerful. Before the roundup, my mother told me, if you're arrested, don't say you're a Jew. So I didn't say I was Jewish. I never mentioned it. I didn't know the other children were Jewish. I had no idea. I was sure I was the only Jewish kid in the orphanage.
The adults looking after the children kept quiet about the dangers they all faced. They tried to provide them with a semblance of normal life.
Life in the house followed the school routine. The classroom had been opened upstairs in the biggest, best-lit room. Depending on the seats available, I would sit next to Isidore Kajman. Sadly, he was arrested and deported and disappeared. Life revolved around days spent in this class. There was a young teacher, Gabrielle Perrier. It was her first job. There were two teenagers in the group, Theo Rice and Arnold Hirsch, who were 16 and 17, and who were tough guys. When there was a problem, they stepped in.
Only a few fragments remain of the children's daily lives, mainly letters which they sent to their families if they still had one.
This is a letter dated 17th of January. I'm not sure who wrote it. Maybe George Halpin. It was no doubt him. I was really glad to receive your card. I'm having lots of fun at Christmas. We were given some toys. I got a paint box and drawing book. I didn't get anything. I eat well and sleep well. I'm doing fine. We go for walks on Thursdays and Sundays. We get up at 7 o'clock. A million kisses, your loving son. 17th of January, 44.
Jacqueline Lusgart told her parents about evenings in her bedroom. I have lots of nice friends, Paulette, Marthe, Suzanne, Liliane, Mina. With their company, I'm not bored. In bed, we talk about films. We recount them to each other. And we also talk sometimes about our mamas, and I talk very often about you. Liliane Gerenstein wrote in her notebook as if for herself. God, by your grace, I had a good life before. God, after that, I only ask one thing of you. Bring back my parents, my poor parents. Don't let them suffer, they're such good parents. Protect them, even more than me, so I may see them again as soon as possible. Bring them back. In 1 year, the house saw more than 100 children come through its doors. Thanks to her connections, Sabine Zlatin managed to find homes or hide more than half of them. In February 1944, Samuel left the house and was taken in by some family friends. Paul Niedermann, who'd been there since the early days, also left.
One day, a gendarme came who was very friendly with Miron. He came to tell us, one of your kids is much too tall. Make him leave. He's going to draw attention. It'll lead to problems. Once again, I owe my life to Miron. He didn't waste a second. I was digging in the garden. He called me to his office. He said, listen, you have to go. You can't stay here, it's too dangerous. Once again, we were a group of 8. That was the maximum. We were disguised as scouts. That's the idea we came up with. We reached the border village in Haute-Savoie of Douvaine. It was planned so it was a moonless night. We walked for 3 or 4 miles with, get this, 2 youths from the village who were early members of the resistance and who guided us. They said to us, even if you fall, say nothing. Put your hands over your mouth, not a sound. So they cut the barbed wire and said, you're on your own now. Follow the river to the right. It'll take you to the village. In the middle of the village, you'll see a big thing marked police. Knock there. They're expecting you.
Arriving in Switzerland, Paul came to the end of 4 years of wandering. At Izieu, the first days in April 1944 brought a semblance of happiness. Adults and children captured the moment in photos. It was Thursday the 6th of April, the first day of the Easter holidays. Sabine Zlatin was not there. Leon Reifman was the only person who could recount what happened in the house that morning. He testified in 1987 at Klaus Barbie's trial.
Et je suis arrivé à Izieu le matin. En cours de route, j'ai pris à Bélé 2 grands garçons qui étaient internes au collège de cette ville et je les ai amenés avec moi. Bien sûr, j'ignorais à quel tragique destin je les menais. Arrivé à Izieu, j'ai eu juste le temps d'embrasser mes parents et je suis monté à l'infirmerie pour voir ma sœur. Nous avons bavardé quelques minutes et puis la cloche du réfectoire a sonné pour appeler les enfants au petit déjeuner. Ma sœur est descendue, je l'ai suivie et arrivé au milieu de l'escalier, j'ai vu s'engouffrer dans le couloir qui menait au réfectoire 3 hommes en civil. Je me suis arrêté. Sur ce fait, j'ai vu ressortir ma sœur qui m'a fait un signe. C'est les Allemands, sauf toi. J'ai entendu dès le départ, donc dès le début, les cris et les larmes des enfants et les hurlements des soldats allemands qui criaient « Schnell, schnell ». C'était le moment où il embarquait tout le monde dans les camions.
Outside, local farmhands watched the roundup, powerless.
Puis quand je regardais dans les camions, là-bas, j'ai vu une chose qui m'a frappé aussi. Les enfants, il y en a qui, les plus grands, ceux qui avaient 10-12 ans, essayaient de sauter par-dessus les plateaux du camion. Et aussitôt, ils étaient remis en place par 2 Allemands qui les prenaient, ils les jetaient dedans comme des sacs de pommes de terre, comme un vulgaire sac, quoi. Et en arrivant dedans, un autre les prenait à coups de pied. C'est peut-être pas des tortures comme certains ont eu, mais c'était pas beau à voir. Et quand ils ont eu fait une 50aine de mètres, j'ai entendu chanter « Vous n'aurez pas l'Alsace et la Lorraine ». C'était tous les enfants en chœur qui chantaient ça.
The German trucks went directly to Montluc prison in Lyon. Among the 44 children rounded up were the Halaunbrenner sisters. Alexandre and his mother did not find out what had happened until much later.
They spent the night here. They were interrogated by Barbie to find out where the rest of their families were. All the children, including my little sisters. My father and brother weren't enough for them. They were looking for my mother, Monique and me. It's hard to imagine.
After a short stay in Drancy, the children and their guardians were all deported. On the 16th of April 1944, 34 of the children from Izieu and 4 of their guardians arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau on convoy number 71. The residents of the house at Izieu did not pass through the camp. No sooner were they off the trains, they were immediately sent to the gas chambers. The others from the house met the same fate in the weeks that followed. The director of the house, Sabine Zlatin, was shot by firing squad a few weeks later in Estonia.
Why? Why round up and deport children and adults, Jews? I don't know what to call it. Right up to the last minute, exterminating. It's incomprehensible, but it took place.
2 months to the day after the children of Izieu were taken away, the Allies landed in Normandy, the beginning of the end for the Nazi regime. It was not until the 27th of January 1945 that the Auschwitz camp was liberated. In the meantime, the Nazis killed more than 200,000 children there. Many families did not know who was alive or who was dead. Loved ones had to be found, lives put back together.
My mother went to Breteux station every day because those deported from the Lyon area arrived at Breteux station. She still hoped to see her daughters again and her son. She was always like that. For a long time, we had no news. The only thing I knew, I hid from my mother. I think it was in 1946. I saw in a newspaper called Combats an article which said the children from Izieu had been burnt at Auschwitz. I cut it out and put it in the pocket of my jacket, which I then tried to hide. But my mother went through my pockets and found it. Why didn't you tell me? I said, how could I tell you such a thing? It was very hard.
The end of the war came as a deliverance for France. But for the parents of the children of Izieu, it left a taste of death. It also left the question of how to mourn these children. Finding those who gave the orders for this crime was a first step. Driven by a thirst for justice, Serge and Beate Klarsfelds dedicated their lives to this task.
We decided to act on behalf of the children of Izieu because they were innocent. They were away from it all in the mountains, and Barbie had absolutely no reason to go there. He didn't really have any superiors in Lyon because he was head of the Gestapo. There was a commanding officer above him, but he was free to do what was needed in the fight against the resistance and against the Jews. So we fought for the children's sake, because he was a free agent. He wasn't just a subordinate doing what he was told.
Identifying the person who gave the order for such a crime is one thing. Bringing him to trial is another, especially in the post-war climate when the major powers wanted to impose their supremacy.
The French knew he was in the American zone. The French made repeated claims for him. The Americans got tired of lying because every time they'd say, "Oh, we don't know where Barbie is." So they smuggled him out to South America, where he also probably became a specialist in torture. It was a move which left him untouchable.
In December 1971, the Klarsfelds had tracked Barbie down to South America. He was living in Lima, Peru, under the name of Klaus Altmann. To bring him to trial in France, the families of the children of Izieu had to support their efforts.
One day I got a call. Serge Klarsfeld introduced himself. I said, "Delighted." He said, "Does Mina and Claudine mean anything to you?" I said, "They were my little sisters." I said, "Why do you ask?" He said there was a chance of catching Barbie despite him being in Bolivia, and he asked if my mother would be willing to go there. I said, "I'd talk to my mother." She said to me, "If you're in agreement, so am I." She really believed he would be convicted. She always had. I didn't. Not with him on the other side of the world. What could we do, especially since he was so useful to the military junta, to Barrios and later Bence? I thought it was impossible. How could we bring him back? But she believed.
After several days tailing the former Lyon Gestapo chief, Beate Klarsfeld and Ita Halaunbrenner were expelled by the Bolivian authorities.
Quelle est la tendance maintenant en Bolivie concernant la demande française d'extradition?
Mais on a l'impression actuellement qu'il y a quand même des gens au gouvernement qui sont obligés de protéger Barbie. Ils se promènent avec 2 gardes-corps. il est un homme tout à fait libre, ce qui est assez étrange, parce qu'étant donné que la France a demandé l'extradition, on pourrait croire au moins que cet homme soit mis un petit peu à part pour qu'il puisse pas fuir.
Madame Halaunbrenner, c'était la première fois que vous preniez l'avion, je crois.
Oui, monsieur, je suis dessus. À 78 ans, pour faire un voyage comme ça. Et puis, le gouvernement, avec Barbie, je suis dessus. À mon âge, pour moi, c'est pénible, un voyage tellement loin. Et j'étais partie pour la justice.
Far from being discouraged, the families of the children of Izieu and the Klarsfelds continued their struggle for the next 10 years. Thanks to a change of regime in Bolivia, they finally obtained Klaus Barbie's extradition. The epilogue of this tragedy took place in 1987. Barbie was tried in Lyon, the city where he reigned 45 years earlier. He had to answer for the roundup of the children of Izieu. Right to the end, the former Gestapo chief refused to accept responsibility for the death of the 44 children.
Barbie a toujours dit qu'il s'occupait uniquement des résistants et des maquisards. Ça veut dire des ennemis de l'armée allemande. Je demande, les enfants, les 44 enfants, c'était quoi? C'était des résistants, c'était des maquisards. Qu'est-ce qu'ils étaient? C'était des innocents.
It was tough. When I was at the trial, on June 1st, 1987, I testified all day long. I was questioned with great precision and pertinence. I got home and I was like a zombie. I wasn't well. For a while afterwards, I dragged around. I had to go into work because I didn't have any choice, but I took a while to digest that, somewhat.
Madame Halaunbrenner, s'il vous plaît.
Qu'est-ce qui est plus cher pour une mère comme des enfants? Il n'a plus cher? Non. Dans la vie, il n'a pas plus cher comme des enfants. C'était un homme, comme il vit encore. Il vit encore, un homme comme ça. Qu'est-ce qui me fait mal pour toute ma vie? Qu'est-ce que je souffre? Déjà, plus que 45 ans. Je restais. Je n'étais pas de métier. De gosse était petite. Qu'est-ce que je souffre? Pourquoi je me besoin tellement souffrir?
On the 4th of July 1987, the verdict was delivered.
L'audience est reprise. Bien, accusé Klaus Barbie, veuillez vous lever, s'il vous plaît.
Klaus Barbie was sentenced to life for crimes against humanity.
How long did your mother live after the trial?
11 months. She no longer wanted to live. I wouldn't say she committed suicide, but she let herself die. She felt she'd accomplished a mission, and that she no longer had her children, and the trial had taken place. She didn't want to live anymore. She no longer had any appetite. She stopped eating. She let herself slip away.
The roundup of the children of Izieu will remain a symbol. The symbol of the massacre of Jews planned by the Nazi regime. The symbol, above all, of the fight for life waged by the residents of the house at Izieu and by those who fought for their memory.